Hi there, this is Carol Marrock at carolmarrock.com. Welcome to Solo and Smart, my YouTube channel offering achievable tips when growing older alone. And if you like my tips, please subscribe to the channel. And today's video, I want to talk about the shift from urban to suburban, which is a big change. It used to be everyone wanted to live centrally and in an urban area. No, it's shifting now to the suburbs. And that is suddenly the big rage. And it's because of COVID. Well, COVID-19 has had some influence. However, it's not the only influence, and that's what I want to tell you about. You know, after a decade that increasingly focused on living an urban lifestyle, it feels like after COVID that everything has been turned inside out. So the next big thing is now not only the big new development in an urban core, but also a walkable suburban development near a transit hub. And the fact is the trends that are driving this renewed look at the suburbs, like I say, is not solely related to COVID-19. The shift is caused by the single most important long-term driver of economic and real estate trends, and that is demographics. And while the conversation is louder all of a sudden about living in the suburbs, there is nothing new about the shift. It's happening or has been happening for the past couple of years. And can you guess who's driving that shift? Well, if you said the baby boomers, you were wrong. It's the millennials because they are getting older, believe it or not. The in-demand suburb of the 2020s may not look like what it has been normally in the past. But of course, since it's millennials who are moving to the suburbs, guess what they're doing? They are taking the aspects of urban lifestyles with them, such as walkability. They want the same highly amenitized type of areas outside of the urban core. And this type of living is definitely going to attract the young first-time home buyers as well as empty nesters, who are looking to downsize. So the expectation will be the best of both worlds, providing the upsides of urban, walkable living with the proximity, close proximity to shopping, as well as affordability and ease historically more available. It's more economic, and it always has been less expensive to live in the suburbs. So the idea really is really causing the shift for us to start looking at smaller houses, and which are enticing us to consider the possibility of living with smaller mortgages or less rent. And of course, the economy and as well as millennials, the singles, empty nesters, and even older adults are thinking smaller is the answer, which personally, I like that idea. Of course, when I downsized and moved to a one-bedroom condo in a high-rise, that was the driving factor for me, was small. I didn't want to have a large responsibility. I wanted low maintenance, let me put it that way. So what's interesting is this idea of smaller units and living close by or getting to know our neighbors is also penetrating the senior housing. There is in St. Louis, there is a nonprofit senior housing company that has broken ground on a $23 million senior living development and they're called St. Andrews Resources, and they're building a neighborhood-style development with 96 one and two bedroom units spread across 24 unit cottages. And so these cottages are really like a multiplex, well, like fourplexes, they're built in one building. And it's adjacent to an existing skilled nursing as well as a memory care facility. So St. Andrews Resources really has the idea of creating pocket neighborhoods, which I've talked about before, which is a wonderful way to promote socialization, better health and interaction, and provide residents flexibility and convenience to come and go, as well as create relationships with their neighbors. So they're calling it more like a micro home senior living, and I think more developers will kind of gravitate to that idea. And I wanted to also tell you about a really cool something that I had learned about in my research. Is this? It's called the Hagar Homestead, and what's remarkable about this? This is in Littleton, which is in Massachusetts. And 3 years ago, when one of the residents, I'll just call her Diane, she had sustained a biking injury. And I'm giving you her story just to give you an example of why pocket neighborhoods, living in an environment where you are nearby neighbors and friends and you have close connections. And this is, I'm going to give you an example of why, because I'm going to tell you Diane's story and why she moved. She's going to move to this Hagar Homestead. She has bought one of the single units there. And because 3 years ago, she sustained a biking injury that rendered her immobile. And she was a Westford resident, which is someplace in Massachusetts, and she realized just how alone she was. Even though she was surrounded by people in her condo, she had to, at the time, she had to beg her friends to drive her to the hospital for surgery, for checkups. And she had to pay people to bring groceries because she couldn't go shopping. She even had to have people come over and help her chop vegetables because she couldn't cook. And she really felt horrible having to beg people to come and help her because it was a stress on her, and she felt like she was such a big burden to a few of her friends. So the next time she was in need of help, she was, of course, she's living alone. She was assisted by her future neighbors after buying a lot at the Hagar Homestead. She received help from other neighbors that are her potential neighbors or future neighbors who too had bought lots at the Hagar Homestead. But and this whole switch, and it seemed like the whole thing changed for her. Whereas when she was sick before, she had to beg people to come and help her out. Whereas when she had invested in this co-housing community, even though she wasn't living there yet, nor were any other neighbors because the place wasn't built yet, but she had people calling her, and her future neighbors were calling her and texting her, bringing her food and leaving it outside her home. And so she didn't really have to feel like, she didn't feel like she was a burden to them. And she felt like the contrast was unbelievable because this co-housing community was really creating an environment of close ties and connections with neighbors, even though she wasn't even there yet. So I just think that's such a wonderful way of living. And I really encourage all of you, for people like me who are older and alone, We really need to set ourselves in a place with friendly and helpful neighbors so that we can look out for each other. And, and to me, it's not so important where our home is. It could be in an apartment building. It could be a small house. You could even be sharing a home with friends or even living in rural America. What's important is that we build close ties with people who we live nearby. And that's really dependent upon us to step out of our comfort zone. I think that's my opinion. So let me ask you, I'm going to end this video with a question. Do you have close ties with your friends and neighbors who are handy if needed? And if not, what is one thing you can do today to create connections with others where you live? So as I end this video, I let that question mull over for a few days. Don't force an answer, just reflect on it and see where it takes you. And you might be surprised some of the answers that you might get. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me at Solo and Smarts. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I will see you in a few days.